Hello everyone and welcome to another video of Barrel and Glass. I'm Trissa and I'm here to talk about pure alcohol. And today we have with us the Grey Goose Vodka. So let's get started on its history. So the Grey Goose was created in 1997 by Francis Thibault, who was a French cellar master with a background of creating fine spirits, especially in the Cognac region of France. So Thibault, who had worked in the industry for 30 years, had a dream of creating the world's best vodka. And the inspiration of the Grey Goose comes from the desire to create a vodka that was premium and distinctively French. And thus the Grey Goose was officially launched in 1997 in the United States. They marketed themselves as the best tasting vodka with the tagline La Vie en Goose, which means life in goose. And then in around 2004, Bacardi Limited had acquired the Grey Goose for a deal which was valued around $2 billion. Now let's talk about the ingredients that goes into making the Grey Goose vodka. The very first ingredient used is the French winter wheat. So this is specifically sourced in the Picardy region, which is in the north of France. So why choose, or what exactly is a winter wheat? So winter wheat is chosen because it is grown in colder temperatures, which allows it to develop slowly and results in a more high quality and more aromatic grain. And this grain is harvested during the spring season and it is milled into fine powder to be used in the production of this vodka. So this winter wheat has low protein content compared to other types of wheat, which makes it very ideal for distillation because the low protein content ensures that the vodka is smooth and free from any kind of unpleasant flavors which might arise from using high protein grains. The second ingredient used is pure spring water. So the Grey Goose sources their spring water from the Cognac region of France near the distillery. And finally, the third ingredient, which is yeast. They use high quality yeast for the fermentation process. Now we move on to understanding the production of the Grey Goose vodka. The very first step is the selection of the ingredients. As I mentioned the ingredients earlier, they use the French winter wheat, the pure spring water and yeast for the very first step in the production process. Then we move on to the second step, which is mashing and the fermentation process. So let's talk a little about mashing. So after the French winter wheat is milled into fine powder, it is mixed with hot water in a process called as mashing. This is done in large stainless steel vats where the starches in the wheat are broken down into sugars, which becomes fermentable. And then we move on to fermentation, where once the mash has cooled down, it is transferred to fermentation tanks where the yeast is added. The yeast ferments the sugar in the mash into alcohol and carbon dioxide, and this fermentation process typically lasts around 3 to 5 days. And during the fermentation, the yeast produces the alcohol and some of the byproducts which are later will be discarded during the next step of the production process. So during this process, the temperature is kept at a constant 20 to 23 degree Celsius. This gives a very clean fermented product and gives it neutral base. Then we move on to the third step in the production process, which is the distillation process. So the Grey Goose vodka uses a 5-step distillation process. So the first distillation, also called as the initial refining, the fermented mash is placed in pot stills, which is a traditional copper stills designed to distill alcohol. So the pot still is heated and the mash evaporates, heats the fermented mash, causing the alcohol vapors to rise up, and then they pass through a condenser where they are cooled and condenses back into the liquid form. So during the first distillation, the heavier compounds, most of the water is removed or separated from the mash. So the resulting liquid is a low proof distillate, and then it goes through the second distillation where the low proof distillate from the first distillation is placed in a second pot still for further purification. Here the process of extracting or separating the alcohol from the impurities and water continues. So it's in the second distillation that the distiller performs the fractional distillation. So this is basically the liquid has a head, heart and tail. What we need is the heart. So the head contains undesirable compounds, the tail also contains undesirable compounds, and only the heart of it is used for the next step. And then we move on to the third distillation, which also enhances further purity in the liquid. So the stage also continues to purify the vodka, and again it moves on to another fourth distillation that continues the process as well. And then finally to the fifth distillation, which is the final refining process. After this step you get the finest and the cleanest vodka, which is almost 100% alcohol and ready for the next step in the production process. And then we have the next step in the production process, the fourth step, which is the filtration process. So after the distillation process, the vodka goes through two types of filtration process. The first one is the charcoal filtration. So this charcoal filtration removes further any of the unwanted components and impurities. So the charcoal acts like a sponge, trapping any kind of volatile organic compounds that would otherwise contribute to an undesirable flavor. So the vodka is passed through a series of charcoal filters, which ensures any kind of harsh remains after the distillation process is also removed. And then it goes to the next type of filtration, which is the granite filtration. So the vodka, after the charcoal filtration, passes through the granite stones, which gives it like a final polishing. So this filtration helps give the vodka its velvety finish. So this granite filtration is quite unique to the Grey Goose because the minerals in the stone adds like a subtle refinement and adds to the velvety mouthfeel that you get from drinking this vodka. And then we move on to the fifth step in the production process, which is the blending and dilution. Once the vodka has undergone the distillation and the filtration process, it is blended with water, the pure spring water that I had mentioned earlier, so that we can reach the desired alcohol content of 40% ABV. And afterwards we move on to the final step, which is the bottling and packaging. So let's talk about the bottle itself. As you can see, the bottle is tall and kind of like a very slim, tall, elegant look to it. You can tell that the glass is of high quality, and one of the most distinctive feature is the frosty glass look, or the frosty glass finish that it has. It is one of the most striking features of the Grey Goose bottle. This gives it like a nice soft matte kind of finish, and it would look great there sitting on a shelf. Look at it. And then we have a very recognizable element, which is the soaring goose. So this is an iconic emblem that kind of symbolizes its French origin, and the goose is depicted in flight, which represents freedom, movement and refinement. So the label here clearly highlights the French origin. So it says here distilled and bottled in France, and it also shows the alcohol percentage down here, which is a 40% ABV. The bottle that I have here is a 750 ml. In the back they have mentioned the ingredients used, that is the wheat and the winter wheat and the spring water, and the details of that is right over here as well, along with your other standard warnings. And this is priced between 150 to 160 dirhams in the UAE and $45 to $50 in US. And occasionally Grey Goose also releases some limited edition bottles with like unique designs and other exclusive packaging as well. So let's move on to the much awaited smell test and taste test. I can see here it has a wooden cork cap, so I'm gonna go ahead and open this. A wooden cork. Just gonna give this a smell. It's giving like a very clean, almost like a light grainy sweetness. You can smell like a light hint of wheat, but it is not too overpowering, and on the nose it does not have too much of the burn of the alcohol. So now we're going to give this a pour and give it a taste. So as you can see, the liquid is clear, and let's give this a quick taste. Goes in very smooth. I really like this. It's incredibly smooth, has like a very light creamy feel to it, and kind of like it's kind of very soft. As soon as it goes in, a zesty taste hits you first. The finish is quite surprisingly warm, and it's like very balanced. There's no flavor that like fully stands out and that you can immediately distinguish. You need to take like a bit of time, like a few more sips, and to kind of taste the undertones. So once you take a few more sips, you can kind of taste the citrusy light vanilla and kind of like a soft peppery finish to it. Let's talk about the food pairing. So when you're pairing the Grey Goose with food, what needs to be taken note of is to complement the clean and crisp flavor. The vodka goes great with oysters, whether it's raw or grilled. So the vodka can help in cleansing your palate between bites. And another great pairing is sushi, grilled chicken, or chicken skewers also goes very well with this. Cheese and cured meat also complements the vodka really well. Another good pairing is like a freshly baked bread with olive oil. Light salads is another option. Apple and pear slices also kind of pairs with the citrusy notes of the vodka very well. You could also otherwise opt for light pastries like a croissant, a puff pastry, or fruit tarts. When it comes to cocktail, you have a lot of options that you can do with the vodka. You can of course go for like shots, vodka shots with like a lime and some salt. You could try using other cocktails as well, like a cosmopolitan, a martini, like a Grey Goose lemonade, or a Bloody Mary also works very well with this. And when it comes to vodka, I think you have a lot of cocktail options out there that you can try and test out with the Grey Goose Vodka. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed my content and learned something new. If you did enjoy the kind of content that I take, don't forget to click on the like, share and subscribe button. I will see you next time. Cheers.